I went in there thinking for sure I was going to win. It was like, I'm going to beat all these guys. I felt so good. The camp was amazing. And I came up against Kynan in the second round, and Kynan handedly beat me that day and the next day twice. And he was just on fire. But what I took from that match, I think, is way more important. At the end of the day, my loved ones are always going to love me, win or lose. And I've never lost a friend from losing a competition.
Declan Moody is a powerhouse jiu-jitsu black belt from Adelaide, Australia.
Training out of Austin, Texas with the B team.
I struggled quite a lot with having self-confidence in my ability, especially in the sport. And it took me a long time to find that confidence. And I think putting myself in competitions over and over and over again and getting over the nerves, getting over the anxiety, and just sort of forcing myself to make that a new normal for me. So the confidence came in time. Every time I go out and compete, I should be grateful. I get to live this great life where I do what I love for a living. I get to share that with people, and then I get to go out and try and perform my best. It's hard in terms of the work you put in, but it's not a hard life.
Any tips for people kind of trying to speed up the rate of learning?
I would say take advice from every person.
Now, I mean, jiu-jitsu is not a mainstream sport. It's definitely becoming more popular. I mean, someone like myself getting into it, which is kind of someone that doesn't even watch the UFC, or at least at that stage of getting into the sport, didn't watch the UFC, no combat sport, no martial arts. How the hell did you get into that at a young age in Adelaide?
Yeah, it's funny. When I started, it was I just started high school, so I was just sort of looking for something to do, and I was watching the UFC like early days. I remember like Cain Velasquez days. Watching, and I was like, man, I don't really want to be punched that much, but that grappling stuff looks good. And then at the time, the closest gym to me was like 40 minutes away, and my old man would drive me like 3 times a week to go train.
Yeah. Is that kind of like the not wanting to get punched in the face was just not appealing in terms of wanting to keep the brain cells, or it's just also like
I think just as a
punishment.
younger guy, I was like, I don't really want to be punched in the face, you know?
I guess that's talking to some of the guys that I train with out at Aruda as well. It seems to be a common theme, I guess, especially, I don't know, as someone that's into like a PT, doing some business stuff as well, like it's kind of, I need my brain. Yeah. So like, I think that's a common theme. There's quite a few guys in like the corporate world on the mats.
Yeah,
and they're like, this
sure.
is great. I can kind of feel like I'm letting some steam out, but I don't get smashed.
100%, yeah.
Is that like common? You find that
common,
as well?
like, especially like overseas now, we're getting a lot of guys that did a lot of striking stuff for a long time and are having like bad effects, and then they change over.
Yeah. So
you're seeing a lot of that. People come across just, especially now there's getting a little bit more money in the sport. They don't need to be punched, and they're like, why do I want to take this damage for like the pay cut, you know?
Yeah, true. Is that so like, you know, you said obviously decent distance you had to travel to a gym when you were younger, getting started. That's starting to change quite a lot. You know, you've obviously through Craig and things like CJI, that's kind of made it cool a little bit as well. But there's obviously movements before that that have started to grow the sport massively. Yeah,
100%. In Adelaide alone, the sport just has expanded something crazy. I remember when I first started training, there's like 3 gyms, and now there must be 30 gyms here, like around the state. So it's crazy. It's good to see.
Yeah, and then I guess like that's obviously not just an Adelaide-based thing. Although like strange, like you know. Craig, obviously from Adelaide, yourself from Adelaide, Isaac Michelle from Adelaide. Like it seems to be a decent group of like high level grapplers.
It's funny that like us 3 have come from this like really small place, like especially in terms of jiu-jitsu. Like, especially when we came up, there was not really many guys, especially at a high level. Craig sort of opened that door for us to see what the potential was, and yeah, I think it just came down to there's not a whole lot to do in Adelaide sometimes, so it's like, I might as well just go train. You're either going to do that or sit in the pub, you got
That's
a choice.
True. Yeah. Is that so? You and Isaac would be similar sort of age as well?
Yeah, I think there's 1 year between Isaac and myself. We used to train together a lot.
Yeah. Whereabouts were you training together?
We were at Aruda at the time.
Okay. Yeah. Is that kind of like you almost, I mean, listening to some of your stuff and other podcasts and whatever, you said that, the move to Austin massively is just to be surrounded by more high level people as well. I'm sure that was beneficial to have at least someone high level around you at the stage.
Yeah. At that point, it was great to have like someone who also wanted to achieve stuff in the sport, it just keeps you motivated. And like, he came in a little bit later than me, not much, a couple of years, and it was like good to have someone sort of biting at your heels when you've been doing it for a while, just to keep you motivated, keep you going.
Yeah. How much have you found that move to B team has like helped your growth in being around more people like that?
Oh, it's incredible. Like to have instead of like one person, I have a whole room of sometimes like 50 people with a goal, you know, of being the best and like trying to achieve the highest level of jiu-jitsu that can. You know, I think Nicky Rod's the best grappler in the world right now, and I get to train with him every day. And having him push me and have him as a good friend to like guide me in certain ways, and the opportunities that being in Austin has presented in terms of matches and like tournaments that I don't have access to out here.
Yeah.
But over there, it's so easy for me to get on the bigger cards and get my name out there and just push myself to achieve more and more.
Yeah. So is that like mainly like the gyms here massively kind of like we're talking about, like you've got that mixture of the corporates, the guys like me and those sort of things, whereas like you go B team, it's like these dudes are there to win. Yeah,
exactly. Especially during the ADCC and CJI camp, we had sessions solely for pros, and it was 95% either ADCC qualified or CJI qualified athletes.
Wow.
We had a few extras that were obviously insanely talented that just missed out, but like that, the level of room then I think was the best in the world.
So is B team like purely invitational to train there, or it's...
No, it's open for anyone. We also now have a beginners program that runs every night, but I know initially it was almost sort of invitational. I think you had to be purple belt at start, but then it opened up, and now we have a lot of visitors of all levels come through.
Yeah. I guess it becomes that kind of meeting place of like-minded individuals in that sport, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, Adelaide, Texas, you've lived in Japan. There's a bit of travel going on there. Like the sport's obviously taking you around the world. What is that like? You know, it's not a high-paying sport. How are you on the road, making ends meet, doing all those things while training?
Yeah, so at the start, I actually worked at KFC from like when I was in high school through till I just finished university. And then I'd just been saving, and then I just up and left. I just moved to Japan. I was training with the team out at Bonsai there, the team I eventually got my black belt through, and I just moved away. I moved to Japan on and off. I've done like probably over a year there.
Wow.
And was just training flat out. And like, I just had no money. It was like, I would just earn as much as I could while I was here. And then I'd just spend it all just to survive. And, you know, it was like, I was living on like just a little bit. And fortunately for me, my family's always been big supporters, and I've always had like good supporters in Adelaide that have helped me out, especially guys like Miles Simpson, who's always supported me like with opportunities and financially.
Is that kind of a common theme within the sport? Hopefully that seems to be not maybe, but it is starting to make some form of shift at the top level.
Yeah. But
like a lot of the guys they just fucking love it, and money, yeah, cool, that would be nice. But
a lot of the guys at like, you know, B team still, the younger guys are like just scraping by, you know, they're working hard. Like they'll get like a shift as a bartender or something, like working all the weekends, work till 4 a.m. and then like try and train as much as they can through the week. So it's like there's more money in it than there was, but there's still, until you're at that top level, you're never going to be an affluent athlete, you know? Yeah.
A lot of those guys relying on sponsorships on top of that again, even at the top level?
Even at the top level, yeah. The sponsorship's a big thing for all the guys.
So I imagine that's kind of the big push to why Craig kind of came up with CGI to some extent as well, was the whole like money earning in an actual tournament environment.
Yeah, just trying to make that change and like make the sport professional, not just in terms of like aesthetics, but in terms of like the financial for all the athletes. Try and make it viable for guys to be full-time athletes and not like live on the poverty line.
Yeah, which is challenging when you're training multiple times a day and doing you're putting all that time and effort in, and you know, like at the end of the day, you're like, fuck, gotta eat food still.
Yeah, and you got to eat a lot of food to keep going is the problem.
Well, it's crazy. Ever since like starting training, I'm like, I'm going 3 times a week. And I'm like, oh my God, I just can't stop. Like I'm just eating like a horse, not putting on weight. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've moved up a bunch of weight classes through my time in jiu-jitsu, and it's like you're trying to eat 6 times a day, but then you're like almost going to be sick, but then you just can't get enough calories in because you're burning 1,500 calories a session. Yeah. You know, it's crazy.
And then someone just drops their knee into your guts and you're like, oh, it's about to come up.
Yeah, like this is not going to end well for anyone here.
Yeah, you're like, maybe just like take the knee off a little bit just to do us both a favor.
Yeah.
That was funny. So, I mean, lifestyle wise, what's it like, you know, living in Japan, training in Japan?
In Japan, Japan's still my favorite place. Like, I love going there. The people are amazing. Like, it's such a different culture, but such a kind culture and such a respectful culture. But honestly, my lifestyle doesn't really change much in terms of where I am. I just train, try and eat and rest well, and just just try and get the most out of the training, no matter where I am. Obviously in Japan, it's like the food's different and the people are different, and like just getting around, you're getting on the bullet train and stuff. It's like a lot of cool cultural stuff, and I would spend a lot of time going around and like seeing stuff around the town.
Yeah. So whereabouts in Japan do you generally?
It's a place called Hamamatsu. It's in between Osaka and Tokyo. So it's funny when I go there. I haven't been for a few years. I'm hoping to go back starting next year, but it's pretty uncommon to see a white guy walking around there. So you get some looks, you know. It's like I'd say 99% like just Japanese guys.
Yeah.
So
Who the fuck's
it's
this guy?
a little bit out of place. So there's not a lot of English, like almost zero.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different than when you're in like a major city. So you really dropped in the culture.
Is that even when you're training as well? Like you're the only white dude there?
Yeah. The training's a little bit different because there's a lot of Brazilians there still too.
Yeah.
So it's probably like a 60-40 mix, Japanese to Brazilians, but then I'd be the only gringo in there.
Yeah, they probably look at you when you grab your food as well and you're eating like 4 servings. They're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. They're like, wow.
It's Godzilla.
I remember we were at this tournament and these two guys, these like half Japanese, half Brazilian kids, they like, one stood on the other one's shoulder to shake my hand. It was hilarious.
It's like the Transformers.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're going to put a trench coat on and walk into the movies, you know?
Oh, that is absolutely gold. Like, so then, like, you know, the people you're meeting there as well, I'm assuming those connections just kind of form each other to then, you know, the guys you meet there, then you go over to Austin and you're just formulating this big group of people. So wherever you go in the world, you've kind of got people to train with.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I got like friends from all over the world. It's funny if you like see any of my posts, there's comments in like 8 different languages, you know, from those people that I've met training. I got friends from all over Europe and Asia, and it's crazy.
Do you find, like, so if you were to, even someone, if you're not, like, you know, well known in the sport, like someone like yourself, go into another country and you go to a jiu-jitsu gym and you're just like, hey, look, I train, this is, you know, I've trained in Adelaide, but I'm interested in just joining people. Like, yeah, no worries. Like, and you kind of just fit right in.
Oh, for sure. When I went to Japan, I was like a young blue belt. Like I was not a name in the sport, not even in Australia, you know? So it was like, they just welcomed me in and they've always been very grateful to me, the guys at Bonsai, and, you know, that's super appreciated. And it's nice now. They still support me. They always like sharing stuff and I always support them and I want the best for them.
It's pretty cool, like, to see that. I guess, like, similar, like CrossFit kind of has that same sort of like vibe. Like you always see the people in like Bali and they're opening up their gyms in Bali and people go there and they're doing their training and like everyone just seems to have this common understanding of like, I know what you're going through sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it transcends like languages and cultures, you know, you're all doing the same thing. Yeah.
And I find it's so cool. Like it's such a respectful sport as well. Like I've heard in some podcasts, not every gym is like, hey, you know, you line up in your belts and you do all that sort of stuff. But I really like that, like lining up and being like, this is where I am. You guys have earned those positions. Like it's cool.
When I came up through training, it was always like that. And in Japan, it's like even more so like that, just because of the culture. But now training like both at M16 and B team, it's more a little bit free flow and more of a free exchange of information and sort of come and go a little bit more freely.
Do you have like a preference in style of gym, or you don't mind just mixing it up a bit?
I don't mind mixing it up. I think both have their place. I think to learn fundamentals, it needs to be a little bit more structured, you know. One of the best things at B team is the fact that we've got 10, 15, sometimes 25 of the best guys in the world, and we can sit there and just exchange, you know. And if that was to be in a more stringent class format, you wouldn't have the same success. But the fact that we can sit there and talk and discuss technique for as long as we want, and we can like give opinions and thoughts on all these positions, we can work stuff out together. And I think that's, once you have such an understanding of the fundamentals and it's been taught in such a structured manner, then you can start adding these opinions and thoughts and try and like make things more efficient and more effective.
So is that kind of like in that scenario, there's not necessarily a coach running that session. You'll kind of come together and there's maybe this starting movement that you're drilling, and then everyone kind of like pieces their opinion on and be like, well, what if that happens? And what if this happens?
Exactly. So generally like the classes will be a few techniques, but then you'll see the pros, they'll be off doing the technique and then adding this, and then someone will come and give their look at this and issues they face, and you sort of work it out more organically.
And I guess those different issues would be dependent on that specific person, their strengths, their weaknesses, their size.
Exactly. All their attributes versus your attributes. And
Yeah. Do you recommend then, like talking a lot about the foundations, should a beginner start in the gi versus no gi? Or
that depends on your goals, you know. For a very long time, for the first 10 years of my training, it was very gi orientated, all my goals. I wanted to be a gi world champion. And then around COVID time, it just became difficult to pursue the gi because there's no financial incentive.
Mm-hmm.
All of the matches I was offered, all of the professional shows started to lean towards no gi, and that's what changed my mind. So I changed to no gi after doing gi for many years. But at the start, it's nice. See what you enjoy most, I think. I don't think you're going to have a goal with the first day you go into the gym of like, I'm going to be a world champion. It's like, I think you got to see what fits you and then decide on your preference.
yeah. Why do you think the no gi has taken that more popular approach?
I think it's more spectator friendly. It's much easier to understand two guys wrestling than two guys in like karate outfits trying to like, strangle each other, you know? So I think it was just more spectator friendly, and that's what built the sport faster.
Yeah. Do you wonder whether maybe like that link between kind of looks more like the UFC, I guess? Like people go...
For sure, that's a factor. They're like, oh, that makes sense. I've seen guys do this with punches.
Yeah. It's just like, this is the guys, they're just on the floor. Like this is just not elbows being thrown sort of thing.
Exactly. I think that's a big factor.
Yeah. Which is interesting, I guess, like how those little psychological sort of things can play into one being a preference to the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know like it's, you know, I do, at the moment I'm doing 2 gi, 1 no gi. And it is, I go to the different classes. I'm like, fuck, they're so different as well. Like,
yeah,
I remember my first few no gis. I'm like, I'm lost. And this was something that I'm still fucking no idea with the gi, but I still just went in there. I was like, there's nothing to hold.
Yeah, it's funny. They used to say you couldn't be good in no gi without training in the gi, but I think that's completely separated now. I think you can be good at either one without the other, and they don't translate as well as they used to.
Yeah, which is interesting because I see a conversation with Josh Saunders, and he seems very heavy to not want to get in the gi, and he kind of seems to just have done a lot of his training in that, and it's like, well, he's done all right, hasn't he? Like,
exactly,
dude's a fucking big unit too. That helped, but like clearly proves that you can do it.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some of the the main differences then? Like we've said, obviously nothing to fucking grab. That makes a big difference. But what else is kind of the key fundamental differences?
A lot of the rule sets are very different. Like a lot of the leg attacks aren't available in the gi. They've just always been illegal. So I think rule sets is sort of what dictates how different the sport is. Obviously, like being able to grab someone and hold collars and sleeves is going to slow the sport down a little bit and make it make grip exchanges a little bit more important. But I honestly think rule sets are what differentiates everything. I mean, like jiu-jitsu and judo used to be the same thing, but then the rules would change for both, and that's why we have two different sports, because they're both grappling sports and they both wore the gi, but one had different rule set than the other.
So what's the big differences then between those two?
Judo is primarily standing and throws, okay? And judo has had a lot of rule changes through the years. And I'm not overly qualified to talk about it because I obviously haven't trained judo, but a lot of the groundwork is limited to time. If you throw someone clean to their back, that's a win. You win automatically. So it ends there. Whereas obviously jiu-jitsu primarily you start standing, but you'll spend most of your time working on the mat.
Yeah. It's interesting because I guess then you've got like a wrestling, which is also more standing, but without wearing any, like you're just in the slacks as well sort of thing.
Exactly.
And you go, well, what's the fucking difference here? Like it's...
And that's again, wrestling and jiu-jitsu are different just because of the rules. Like there's no submissions in wrestling and the goal is to pin your opponent, whereas jiu-jitsu doesn't end with a pin, it ends with a submission. But like those two things could have started very similarly, and then just the rule set changes the sport.
It's kind of like, so jiu-jitsu is kind of like molded a few together.
Yes.
Much like sort of the mixed martial arts has done as well, just obviously without striking in jiu-jitsu.
Particularly grappling, and I think ADCC was a massive part of that. They used to invite a lot of wrestlers that had a lot of success, and MMA fighters come over with their grappling skill sets. And you got to see that merge of grappling, and now you're seeing a lot more wrestling in no-gi. And I think it's almost another different sport than it was prior.
Yeah. Well, I guess like it's, you just apart from people that obviously pull guard and down they go sort of thing, like it's a big part of jiu-jitsu still, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
We saw some pretty heavy takedowns at like CJI and ADCC. Like you're going, fuck, they know how to do it.
Yeah, it's always good when you see like guys that are good wrestlers or good judokas in jiu-jitsu and you get a big throw. It's always exciting, you know?
Yeah. Do you find like it's generally like the heavier weight classes like to stay on their feet to start with more than the lighter guys?
It tends to be that way. It's just harder for a heavier guy to carry another heavier guy for so long. So it's like it's always going to be beneficial to be on top. There are obviously exceptions to that, but I think you're always going to see that trend where it's a smaller guy's not going to get as fatigued pushing off another smaller guy for a long period of time.
Just that whole total weight sort of thing playing a bit
Exactly.
of a role. Yeah. So what, like, say, winding back for beginners getting started, we said like you can kind of choose gi, no gi, whatever you kind of have that preference to. That may change. You've also talked about how surrounding yourself with those people and how you learn best, but like for a beginner, that's probably not a situation they're going to find themselves in. Any tips for people kind of trying to speed up the rate of learning?
To speed up the rate of learning, it's I would say take advice from every person. Like even now, I try and do this. It's like I try not to. My students probably say I'm lying here, but I try not to shut anything out. Like if someone's telling you something, it might not be the best information, but it is information you're gathering. Okay, so try and take little bits from every person in the room and then try them and then filter out the ones that aren't working. I think sometimes people get into the sport and they just get one-track minded. They learn 2 techniques from the class and that's it. That's all they're going to do. Whereas when you're training, I think having an open dialogue and being like, hey, what did you do to me there? And try and pick things out that are happening to you and then try and apply them yourself.
Would that be, I guess, similar in like someone suggests something to you, you try it, doesn't work, but then you fumble onto something else.
Exactly.
As a result.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. Which I guess is when body, like limb length, someone with long arms might get away with something and then someone with shorter arms go, I can't do that. They go, oh, but I need to do that. And then it works.
Exactly.
And you're like, well, if you had that approach of being like, no, doesn't work for me, you're going to limit your ability to learn as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, so obviously we've talked about CJI, ADCC. You decided you competed at ADCC. Was that any special sort of decision there, or was it just lifelong goal?
There's a few factors. Obviously, it's been a lifelong goal for me to be at ADCC, and when I won the trials, it was huge. I had my dad and Miles and my friend Chris there, and it was an incredible experience. And I got offered the spot on CJI, but we had no B team member in under 99 at ADCC, and we had Nicky Rod in the $1 million tournament. And I looked at the bracket at under 99, and I thought I was going to have more success in that bracket than I would against Nicky Rod because I knew what those rounds were like in the lead up. So I weighed up opportunity versus financial gain, and I thought I would have more success in the under 99 than I would have winning CJI.
Is it something you'd like consider switching in the future, or just depends again on that same sort of breakdown?
Every time it's going to depend, because the other thing is I don't want to fight my teammates. So that was a big factor if I was the only B team representative in under 9 category. So that was a big push for me. And then, like I said, it's always going to have variables that are going to impact my decision. Depends where my thoughts are at the time.
Yeah. With that, I guess like there seems to be a little bit of divide, at least online, massively between like people going almost like you have to pick one or the other. Do you feel like that's massively exaggerated by social media versus if you just talk to people around the gyms on the mats, like they're kind of like there's not this strong hatred towards ADCC and CJI?
100%. You look at, obviously Craig stirs up the guys at ADCC, but Craig made his name off ADCC and he put a lot of work in to get to where he did with multiple time silver medalist and all the guys at B team. We had a split room of like half CGI competitors and half ADCC competitors, and it was like both respected the other. There's no real bad blood, I don't think, on that end. On other ends, I'm sure there is.
Within the four walls of the B team, sure, like, but outside of that, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess then it probably just turns into a bit of banter rather than kind of like, oh, you're fucking competing in that one and this one. And
exactly.
Then just makes for a bit of fun on the match instead.
You just stitch each other up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess like a big part of that, obviously, you kind of hope then maybe with the push of Craig doing what he's doing, then the alternative side also starts to monetize a little bit more, and you go, well, there doesn't have to be such divide because they're both just, trying to grow the sport.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Both sides want the sport to be more popular. They're just going at each other they're going about it in different manners. Okay, Craig's trying to grow financially. ADCC was trying to go more for the spectacle, trying to bring eyes, and obviously that will in turn eventually lead to financial gain. But Craig was like, we need the money now, went deliberately for a smaller venue with less seating and just put on 2 brackets for big money.
Have you ever like done, you trained with like the kind of, what's the setup they called with like the walls?
The wall?
Yeah.
We had a wall built in the gym for the camp, and it's an interesting experience. It's like once you hit that wall, you've either got to walk up it and risk getting slammed off it, or you're going to slip. It's different than any training I've done. I've done like quite a bit of stuff on the wall and done some like cage work, but it's totally different from that. Like the cage and the cage you can lean on and use it. The wall, if you try and lean on it, you're gonna slip.
Yeah. I guess that's interesting as well. Like that's a big advantage for the guys that were training in gyms that had that, because you can start to learn how to leverage that then as well.
Oh, for sure. That as soon as it was announced that it was going to be in the pit, the Tackets built, I think they were the first ones to build a wall. They had it done in like 2 or 3 days, and you saw it. You saw particularly Andrew used the pit a lot, and I think that just comes down to experience in that environment.
Yeah. Well, I guess like if you've done more reps than someone else and you're more comfortable in an environment, like it makes sense that you're going to perform well.
Exactly. Even if you could like take someone who perhaps is better than you, I don't think you could have said anyone was better than Andrew on that day. Him and Cade had the best match I've ever seen. But if you have more experience in an area than someone else and you put them in that area, you give yourself such an advantage.
I was going to say, speaking on that match, like I had not really watched much jiu-jitsu, was pretty fresh into it. And like, luckily that was like the first major event that I really looked at, minus one of Josh's fights before our podcast episode. And I was like, holy shit, that was just electric. Like, it was so cool.
That is the match when if someone asks you what jiu-jitsu is, you would send them that to like get them interested. I remember I just got home because I fought in the absolute division of the ADCC. So I was competing on the same day that was taking place. And we got back to like our Airbnb in Vegas, and I was like, I put my phone up in the shower to watch it while I was in the shower, and I think I kicked every soap bottle, everything over, shit was flying. I was like, I could not believe what I was watching. I got water all over my phone. I'm trying to like make sure my phone doesn't turn off. I was losing it. It was incredible.
Yeah, and I mean like I said, like that's probably where like you're talking about the fast tempo of no gi a little bit more as well.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That was just fucking rapid. And probably the shorter rounds, I imagine, plays a bit of a role in trying to get it done quickly.
Yeah, exactly. 5 minutes. You can go half 5 minutes with a 1 minute break. The longer matches, you gotta pace yourself a little bit better. But I think it also came down to those two athletes. It's like Cade and Andrew were just so incredible, and they were never gonna get tired. They could have run that for 30 minutes and they'd have kept that pace up.
There's like ever-ready batteries. They're just fucking
going.
It's
crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess, they've proved that by backing fight after fight after sort of thing as well. Like you're just constant, so they would have had 3 matches prior to that, or 2 matches at least prior to that?
I believe it was 2 matches prior to that, and then that was the semi-finals, and they're just still fresh, just ready to go.
Yeah. And well, you saw like Cade come into the final and he's still bouncing around. I'm like, man, this dude's got energy.
Oh, it was crazy. Like to have that war and then come in against Levi, who's got the hardest guard in the world to pass, I think, right now, and just make some serious attempts at that and like put the pace on as much as he could.
Yeah, well, it definitely came at good timing to try and grow the sport because like get the publicity out there as well while all eyes were on it.
Exactly. Yeah, they couldn't have worked out better. Everyone in jiu-jitsu was in that place in the world at the time. The 2 biggest tournaments were happening. Everyone's watching, seeing what was happening, and then the best match ever happens. It's like couldn't be more perfectly written.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And then Craig rips his pants off and walks down in his rainbow budgie smugglers.
Incredible.
He was like, "There's another spectacle in itself." Like,
That was the biggest boo I've ever heard when he put the shorts back on.
yeah. I was gonna say, even my computer, I was like, I feel like I'm there. Like this boo is like radiating through. Like, it was hilarious. I guess like it takes a character like that to sort of put on an event like that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, the sport is lucky to have that guy.
Yeah.
You know, like not just any promoter could put that on, but you know, you need a guy who's a little bit crazy to do it.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's like, you know, probably not an exact comparison, but you look at someone like a Conor McGregor with like the UFC, and you're like, when you hear UFC, you hear Conor McGregor.
Exactly.
Like that goes hand in hand. Like even if he, you know, lost this fight and lost that fight, whatever it is, like it's still Conor McGregor. Like he's the character. He's this guy. Like he sold it.
The face is always going to be there. You know?
Yeah. Which I guess whether that was like an intention of Craig's, you know, there's probably going to be something similar that kind of happens is like jiu-jitsu. Oh, wasn't there that dude that put on that event
that
and ripped his
Australian
pants
guy?
off?
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm sure he'd be pretty chuffed about as well.
Oh yeah.
Now obviously, so your competition, ADCC, you know, you're always going, I imagine, well, you definitely would go in with the intention, you're like, I want to win gold sort of thing here. You know, that didn't happen, but you obviously 2 for 2, two wins, two losses.
Two losses. Yeah.
How do you, psychologically, how do you deal with that? You know, you've gone all the way to Vegas. What are the sort of things you do then post tournament?
Like post tournament, I went in there thinking for sure I was going to win. I was like, I'm going to beat all these guys. I felt so good. The camp was amazing. And I came up against Kynan in the second round, and Kynan like handedly beat me that day and the next day twice. And he was just on fire. But what I took from that match, I think, is way more important. Like what I felt, the techniques I took from losing, feeling him, how he approached it, I think it's going to lead me to more success down the line. So I try to take the positives out of it, you know. I've always said I try not to put much pressure on myself anymore. At the end of the day, my loved ones are always going to love me, win or lose, and I've never lost a friend like from losing a competition, you know. So my life's not going to change that much. Money doesn't mean that much to me, you know. It's like as long as I can live happy, it doesn't matter, you know. Obviously, there's going to be some financial benefit if I win, but I'm not going to be upset because I lose. I'm just going to go back and work harder and get better.
Yeah, it's just that internal battle. Like the external's going to be the same. You're going to wake up, same thing tomorrow.
Exactly. Of course, you're going to be upset. You know, I put a lot of hard work in and I thought I was going to win, but if I just dwell on that, I'm never going to improve.
How important is that confidence? Like you said, you came in being like, I genuinely think I'm going to win. Like if you came in with an itch of, I'm not sure.
I think, you know, if you come in just happy to be there, then you're not going to perform, you know. I went there fully thinking that I was going to win that tournament. And I think that's super important. I think if you don't believe that, it's almost pointless being there.
Well, I guess like you're a competitor at the end of the day, aren't you? Like,
yeah,
professional athlete.
I still want to win.
You want to do, yeah. It's interesting. Like to some people, that kind of is not a concept they're probably very familiar with, and I imagine it's something you've had from a young age. Like you've that competitive edge.
No, I always struggled. Like I was probably technically better than a lot of matches I lost at the start of my career. I struggled quite a lot with having self-confidence in my ability, especially in the sport. And it took me a long time to find that confidence. And I think just that came with putting myself in competitions over and over and over again and getting over the nerves, getting over the anxiety, and just sort of forcing myself to make that a new normal for me. So the confidence came in time.
Is that something like, again, time, reps, you're just doing it more and more again. The more you have that success, you're like, oh, that builds that confidence cup up a little bit more, and you just keep pursuing that.
Yeah, I had to tell myself that, like, I have to be so good at this sport that even at my most anxious and worst feeling, I can still beat the other guys. So I had to build myself up to be like that. I had to like try and push myself to be as technical and as good as possible, that even if I felt terrible, I could still win matches.
Where, like, did you do anything external to just stacking your reps, obviously on the mats? Was there anything more that you just did mental specific to work on that?
I read a few sports psychology books just to try and like give myself some perspective that other people have used, and a lot of it is like just self-talk and like things like that, and envisioning the matches and things like this. But um, it's so difficult. You can read words on a page, but to apply them, I think you just got to put yourself in that position to build that confidence in yourself.
Which is, I think, apply is a really powerful thing there. Is like but like first you have to gain, like you said with your training, you gain that information, then you can apply that information. But if you get stuck on step one, it's probably not going to make a huge impact just because you read the page.
Exactly.
Which like anything, you can have all these wonderful ideas in business and sport, and you could study jiu-jitsu and you could read every bloody book and watch every instructional, but if you never touch a mat, you're not going to be good.
Yeah, you've got to go through every step to be successful.
What is, like, do you have sort of routines that you're trying to get yourself into pre-match to mentally prepare yourself, obviously, with those topics?
I just treat it like every day. I train really hard every day. I train with the best guys in the world every day. So when I go out, it's almost like it should be easier than the training, Nicky Rod actually said something to me, and it made me really think. It's like every time I go out and compete, I should be grateful. I get to live this great life where I do what I love for a living. I get to share that with people, and then I get to go out and try and perform my best. It's like it's hard in terms of the work you put in, but it's not a hard life.
It's pretty like powerful in the messy modern world of social media and all that sort of stuff, just to kind of like bring it back down to basics and be like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I shouldn't complain about doing this. I shouldn't be anxious about doing this. I should take joy in what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I guess it's, again, like, it's okay to have those emotions. You're just not getting overrun by them.
Exactly. It's like you're always going to be nervous, but that's normal. You just got to recognize what's normal. The other guy's going to be nervous too.
Yeah. I think nerves just shows you care.
Exactly.
If you're not nervous, you probably don't have that dog in you to go do well either.
You don't care. You don't want to win.
Yeah. What's the whole process then, I guess, like to ADCC? Like, how does the trials work for people that are unaware of all that?
So ADCC has trials in each of its different regions. You've got North America has 2 trials, South America has 2 trials, Europe and Africa have their trials together. They have both trials. And Australia and Asia have their trials together, and we have 2 trials. So for me, the process was I won the first Australian trials, which was in Singapore. So we flew out there. Me, like I said, my dad, Miles, who owns M16, and my friend Junior, and we went out there and we just relaxed, got acclimatized, did a couple light sessions, and then went through the process. I believe I had 4 matches that day. Won the trials, and then because I won the first trials, I got a long wait until ADCC. So it's like I won the trials in November last year, and then ADCC was August this year.
Wow,
so
it's a big gap.
There's a huge gap because they have to run all the trials events. So if you win the first one, you buy yourself a lot more time than the second trials.
So is that invite only to the first trial?
No, anyone can enter the trials.
Okay.
No requirements at all to enter the trials. So, especially like Asian trials is like regarded as one of the lowest trials because we have less people. The quality tends to not actually be lower. If you look at the guys, like Isaac has beaten most of the trials winners. I beat the Brazil trials winner and the US trials winner. So the quality is not higher. We just don't have the volume. So every trials in the US sells out. You're talking 256 guys a bracket.
Wow.
So that's crazy for the volume of matches. So that tends to be regarded higher. Whereas the Asian trials, like I said, I had 4 matches. I think it was like a 20-something guy bracket. So, yeah, it just varies.
It sums up sport, I feel like, in Australia in general. Like, I feel like at the Olympics, you look at like the medal tallies and all that, and we're like punching well above our weight for like the volume that we're putting out there, like the amount of people.
Exactly, yeah. We just have far less people in the sport. And like you said, in all sport, population-wise, we're a small populace, but in every sport, we have success.
Yeah. So is that like, are you seeing like guys from all around Australia, or is there specific states that, obviously Adelaide being one, that seems to be doing pretty well in the sport?
I think it's everywhere now. Like Lockie Giles was from Melbourne, Josh from Sydney, Craig, myself, and Isaac were from here. But I don't think it's state to state. I think Australia as a whole was starting to build a scene where we can build really high level guys.
Which do you think some of that filters down from the rise of interest in UFC? Now they're having events in Perth and Sydney, and so that whole martial arts sort of as a bracket term is growing as well.
Yeah, 100%. Just not just jiu-jitsu, but all combat sports in Australia. And we've always had a very good Muay Thai scene and very good MMA fighters. You know, same thing in the UFC. We didn't have many, but they all have been successful, like to a good level. Just look at how good Robert Whittaker is, and then you look at how good Volks is. It's like crazy the high level guys we have to the volume of fighters we have in the UFC.
Yeah, it's very impressive. You know, you've got a few comps coming up. Obviously, one this weekend, M16.
Yeah.
But then you've got Josh coming up this year as well, and then Felipe in December, I think. Also, is that correct?
Yeah. So I've got a nice run. I've got Nathan Reddy this weekend, a very decorated MMA fighter, and a very very good jiu-jitsu athlete. Very knowledgeable guy. He's been around a long time. I'm looking forward to having a match with him. Also a very, very good guy. I like him a lot. And then we got Josh at the end of November. I think this is the match that a lot of Australians have been waiting for. You know, he's I think he gets a lot of stick because he's a big guy. But if you look at how technical his jiu-jitsu is, it's very impressive. You know, I think I'm obviously the trials winner of the weight class below. So I think people have seen him like fight guys either not at his level or not at his size, and I'm probably the closest in both. So we'll hopefully have one of the best matches in Australian history, and like both of us will get a push. Obviously, I want to win, but I'm looking forward to pushing the sport for the country even to a higher level. Following that, I fly back to the US, and then shortly after I fight Felipe Pena, which is going to be the biggest match of my career. Obviously, Felipe Pena is one of the greatest to ever do the sport. So it's a huge honor that he, first of all, took the match with me, and that Flo gave me this opportunity. And I'm going to go out and try and show that I'm at that elite level.
So it's, I mean, you know, you look at a lot of, I mean, minus say your footies, and they're competing every weekend, whatever. But in the combat sport, it seems to be an unusual thing to be competing that often.
Yeah, and then that's not even my last tournament for the year. Like, I'm going to fight Felipe, and then the next day I fly out to Kazakhstan to fight in Kazakhstan in a team tournament. So a busy finish to the year.
Is that with the B team?
No, that's another team. I'm going to wait for them to announce everything, but yeah, it's going to be a very solid lineup.
It's a packed back end of the year then for you. That's exciting. Yeah, like looking at like obviously seeing Josh like and sitting next to him and just being like, holy shit, this dude's a big unit. Like, I mean, how much does weight play a role? Like, there's weight classes for a reason.
100%. There's of course. Josh is gonna probably be one of the biggest and strongest. He's not the biggest guy I've ever fought, but he's gonna be one of the biggest, most athletic and strongest guys I've ever fought. But the open weights always exist in jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu can nullify the weight. Obviously, the weight's gonna have a factor and the strength's gonna have a factor, but the jiu-jitsu is the most important part.
Is there a difference? Like, do you think weight plays a bigger role in gi versus no gi, or similar to that extent, the technicality will win?
It's interesting. I think if you would have asked me when I was doing the gi, it would have been easier in the gi to negate the weight. But I don't know anymore. I think my opinion is like it's the same.
What's sort of caused that shift in opinion?
I think just the technique changes now, like understanding no gi more. There's ways where you can carry people's weight and negate the weight more efficiently. Whereas I used to think it was easier in the gi because you could make grips on the sleeves and keep them at distance using your legs. Whereas I think I didn't quite have the understanding of that no gi, of how to do that. But now that exists more so.
So it's just kind of you going along your journey to unlock more of those abilities as well, that you change that mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. How much do you think then, like jiu-jitsu in like a street version, you know, obviously this seems to be a common thing, like, oh, well, when there's fists, it means fuck all sort of thing. Like, if, you know, people are doing it for that self-defense point of view, how beneficial do you think it is? Of
course, being able to protect yourself is going to be a big factor. Like, obviously, you're not going to pull guard because you're going to get kicked in the head. But
could you imagine that?
Exactly. But if someone if someone was to start a fight with Josh, I'm confident 100% he can wrap his hands around that guy and put them to the ground and stop the situation. And I think that goes for everyone who's at a good level of jiu-jitsu. They will be able to protect themselves. Training specifically for self-defense, you have to have self-defense in mind. So if you're training and you're doing positions where you can be hit or you could be attacked in any way, you have to take those positions out of your training and apply only positions where you're going to be safe from strikes and other factors.
Which I guess like is interesting because I look even as the fundamentals of what I've learned so far, like the amount of times you get put in just a tight position, you're like, I actually can't use my arms or my legs really anyway. So I guess like you look at and you get someone tight in like a side control or a mount, and you're kind of like, there's pretty much fuck all they can do with their arms anyway.
Exactly. And you see that. I think a good way to like look if a technique's going to work in self-defense is it being used in MMA, because that's as close as you can come to an altercation on the street within rules, you know. So if it's being applied in MMA, then it's probably going to be useful in a street scenario.
How much then? So obviously M16 is an MMA based gym.
Yeah.
So the guys that are then the MMA fighters, how different does their training look compared to your training on the mats?
Again, it's that thing of rule sets. Their rule sets allow striking. So we use techniques, like I'm saying, that nullify striking, keep us safe in striking. Their training, obviously, they have set MMA sessions. They do the grappling sessions. And I teach stuff that's obviously not going to apply to them as much, but it's important for them to still know these techniques. So they'll use that, they'll learn, they'll just grow their wealth of grappling knowledge. But it becomes pretty intuitive when you've done it for a little while. From what I've seen of the guys, I don't train MMA myself. They can filter out what's good and what's not. And obviously when we do the MMA sessions, I was working with the guys on their grappling, and we would work specifically from MMA safe techniques. Yeah.
So they're kind of like they'll do their own sessions as well in that sort of scenario to really nail down on those MMA specific grappling.
Exactly. A lot of cage work and a lot of ways we can keep ourselves safe, and a lot of like reactions we'll get when you are striking an opponent and things they will give you that aren't going to present themselves in jiu-jitsu.
So what does a week of training look like for you outside of fights, like outside of leading up versus leading up?
It's very similar. Not a lot changes. I do my strength and conditioning work, and then I do the pro session at B Team, which is the midday session, and then we'll add in some drilling and stuff in the lead up specific to opponents and specific things where I might be lacking in my game at that point in time. And then what'll vary is the intensity of the sessions. The CJI camp gave me a very good perspective. Dima ran an incredible camp, and how he was running it every day would have a specific intensity. Okay. And then we look to ramp intensity up towards the tournament, and then add more volume when the intensity was lower.
Which is interesting because I guess frequency of sessions for other sports generally seem to change massively. Like if you looked at a soccer player, an AFL player or whatever, like it's their cardio-based training in the off-season would be just huge, and then coming into and their weights are probably up a little less skills, and then that massive shift. But yours is more just about the volume and the intensity, not the actual training itself.
Exactly. Especially because we were still trying to add in technical aspects to the game as well. So we couldn't keep like high intensity the whole time, because we need to be adding more techniques, more details at the same time, then apply the intensity later down.
So what does your gym training then look like? How often are you doing that? Compound lifts?
I lift probably more than most guys in jiu-jitsu. I lift 5 times a week, and I lift like based off a powerlifting regiment. Like I'll do my bench day on like a Monday, and then add in like accessory lift, like bodybuilding style accessories, and then we'll squat on Tuesday, and then I'll give myself the break until Friday to do my deadlift. But in those middle days, just do more accessory lifts.
So you're on the mats almost every day, or every day?
Every day, generally. Probably take Sundays off most of the time, depending what's coming up.
Is that 1 session, 2 sessions?
It varies. again, it varies on intensity, and then drilling sessions depends where we are in the lead up from a tournament.
Yeah. Which I guess you can start to see once again, like hearing that breakdown of your week, that massive difference between the guys that I train with on the mat sort of thing as well. And then someone like yourself and all the guys at B team is kind of like, yeah, like I'm sure there's guys there that are that like training that often and that frequently and whatever. But like, it's just kind of like, there's no way I could train multiple times a day. There's no way. Like it's such a difference in, scene of the type of people there.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about like from a recovery point of view, nutrition? Is there anything that you kind of like really works for you, or you just whatever feels good?
I'm terrible at both of them. I eat like shit, and sleep is the most important one, obviously. As long as I'm sleeping, and for me, it's more. I do try and eat cleaner than I used to, but it's more calories in versus calories out. That's important to me at the moment.
Well, I guess if you're not, regardless of food quality, if you're not getting enough in, you're just going to start to shrivel away.
Exactly. And it becomes very difficult to eat very large amounts of very healthy foods. It's the volume of food becomes impossible at a point. So you've got to have a cheeseburger every now and then. That's
why that's such a great strategy for weight loss, is to do that healthy volume of food.
Yeah.
But if you're on the other end of the equation, you're like, yeah, this sucks.
Especially these next three fights being at heavyweight, it's like I'm a very like small heavyweight comparatively to some of the guys. Yeah. I probably walk around between 100 and 105 kilos. You got guys up to 130, 140 plus heavyweight. So when I'm like fighting at heavyweight as opposed to anything lighter, like under 99 is perfect for me. I know that's a nice cut for me. It's not too bad. But when I'm at heavyweight, that's when the volume of food has to go up. Try and get up to like 107, 108 when I can.
So that's what you'd hope to be for your like.
Hopefully for the next two matches, I'll probably be around that weight.
Yeah. Well, that's a big difference, isn't it? Like fluctuating up that 10 sort of kilo range as well, depending on who's going to be in front of you there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you find that has a big impact on like gas tank, all those sort of things being a heavyweight?
Not really. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe my cardio is always bad, but because I'm training as I'm increasing my my mass. I feel like there's not very much difference, like my training intensity is going up anyway, so my cardiovascular system is improving as the weight's coming on.
How many would you roughly know how many calories you think you're consuming in a day when you're trying to get up to 107, 100?
When I was getting really heavy, we were looking at like 6,500 plus. Yeah.
So tell me, how are you getting that all in?
Well, in Austin, there's this place called Carbo Bob's, and they do burritos. And the volume of burritos that was consumed during that camp, I think I kept the place in business. And if it wasn't me, we were bringing like 10 guys a day to that place after training. And we're getting like 2,000 calories of burrito plus tacos plus they have these little churro sweets. Hopefully they sponsor me after this.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's if they exist now that you're not in Texas.
That's it. Once the camp ended, it was funny. Like the lines looked dead. Everything looked dead in there. I was like, oh no, what have we done to this place?
You need to get like a little like collaboration with them and B team, just so there's like some tickets on the way out. You can get like a little discount code.
It was so funny. My buddy Clank came over for the camp and he commented something on their Instagram and they reshared it. And like, yeah, we're keeping that place afloat.
Needs to become the jiu-jitsu hangout sort of like.
Man, that camp, it was like you bump into guys from other gyms in Austin that are there and like it's funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, there's people that would be on their weight loss journey or weight gain journey and they're hearing that and they go 6,500. Like, that's just nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I try and eat frequently. It's trying to eat like at least 6 meals a day,
And that's a challenge in itself. Like, you're just not hungry. Like you said earlier, like it's just like you have liquid calories, smoothies, those sort of things to try and help with that.
Yeah. I think it's almost impossible to do if you're doing it purely on just food. It's so difficult. But yeah, just trying to eat frequently and like as clean as possible. But sometimes it's just not going to be possible.
Yeah, I just smash heaps of peanut butter.
I'm a big peanut butter guy. Yeah. Especially in smoothies and stuff, and like, even if I'm having like a quick meal, it'll just be like peanut butter sandwiches, just lathered up, trying to get the calories in.
Every time you have an apple, a bit of peanut butter.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight like, and I don't think people quite understand that. I guess like for athletes, like that food, like and you see it with like footy players, like when they finish their career, swimmers as well, like they just blow up in size. They get so fat, and it's like because they're so used to eating so much, then their training just goes boom.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of jiu-jitsu guys. You see them, they like start to retire, and the weight goes up, and they're just looking a little bit flabbier and flabbier.
Yeah. Well, I guess like those sort of habits and routines of eating probably stay very similar.
You're just going to be so hungry. Like you're just going to be used to consuming so much food.
Yeah.
As soon as you stop burning those calories, they're just going to hang around.
And I guess like you don't have to necessarily have the discipline around food that people that aren't training like that have to have, because like we said, you can just get away with eating anything.
Yeah, 100%.
So you have that freedom. Which challenge. That's definitely a challenge. Well, I mean, I really appreciate your time, man. Like that was really insightful. Hopefully for people that are, new to the sport and trying to get into it, they've got some stuff that they can work through as well, but also an insight into, a professional athlete. It's always very interesting.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers, man.